Got it. There are no participants. I don't know what's going on with this. This weirdness, I think, happened the last time too.
Now it says join webinar in progress. Are you on?
I'm on, but nobody else is. Okay, this must be you, but nobody else. No, Mike Sinorama. No, I don't see you, Suzanne. Okay, come on. Why do I have to register? Oops. Oh, Peter's there. Peter. Oh, you're not. Good evening, Peter.
Hello, how you guys doing?
Good.
weekend?
So I don't hear it twice.
So I showed Corey and Sue the picture. Hold on.
Good evening, all. Oh. Good evening, all.
Good evening, Greg.
So, did anybody else get that strange interface to get in?
Yes.
Yes.
What was that? It took forever too. I'm sorry.
We're gonna have to look into that because I think that happened last meeting and we thought everything was fine.
Is my audio working?
Yes,
It is.
I had my speaker turned down, Peter. I thought it wasn't working. I'm like, I can't hear Peter.
Code here.
Good evening,
Can you hear
Ahmed.
me?
Evening, Thomas.
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, good.
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
That's Bob.
good evening.
Good evening.
Mr. Stetson, good evening. All right, 6:30. I don't think Chris is joining us tonight, if memory serves me. I had to make an emergency trip to Logan at 3:30 in the mornings. Memory isn't quite what it used to be yesterday. Okay, anyways, let's get us going. So good evening, one and all. Welcome to the regular meeting of the Easton Planning and Zoning Board, October 24th, 2022. In keeping with an act relative to extending certain state of emergency accommodations, this meeting will be conducted remotely over Zoom. Attendance by board members will be remote, and remote attendance shall count towards a quorum. This meeting will be broadcast live and recorded on ECAT. To use Zoom, you can follow the link on the agenda, which can be found easiest on the front page of the town's website and the calendar. While conducting meetings remotely, we will endeavor to keep meeting operations as close to our standard procedures as possible. However, use of this platform will necessitate some additional meeting protocols. While board members and applicants will be on video and audio, public participants will join the webinar as attendee, meaning they are muted with no video feed from them. During the public testimony portion of the meeting, members of the public can be recognized by using the raised hand function or the Q&A function on Zoom. If you are joining only by phone, you can press *9 to raise your hand. Board members are asked to announce themselves when making a motion and second, so it is clear to the audience and minute takers who made the motion. All votes will be by roll call. So to ensure we have a quorum, we will start with a roll call. Greg Strange, present. Peter Duchesne.
Present.
Deb Balsaric. Deb, you're muted. Are you
Hear
here?
that?
Now I can hear you.
You
There
hear
go.
that? Okay.
Yeah, now I can hear you.
Maybe
Couldn't
there's
at first.
Maybe there's a delay.
Amos Kedem
Here,
and Robert Stetson.
present.
Thank you, one and all. Excuse me. And I just want to let the folks know, we'll get to it as we go through the agenda, but the continued public hearing for 464 and 466 Foundry Street, we have received a request to continue to our next meeting, so that will not be heard tonight. So first up, we have an internally illuminated sign application, 25 Robert Drive, Liquor World. Is there anyone presenting for them?
I think we have Mike from Sinorama.
So Mike, when you are ready, you can give us your name and address for the record and feel free to present.
I
How
think
about now? Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you. Yep.
All right. So this is Mike Wood. I'm the owner of Sinorama Worcester, and we are at 456 Grove Street in Worcester, Mass. We're
Welcome.
representing Liquor World.
All right. So what do you have for us?
So we have an internally illuminated channel letters on the building. They are occupying unit 30 and 31. This is the two suites that are between TJ Maxx and the Big Y. And these combined are under 100 square feet. These will be, like I said, the channel letters mounted to the wall without a raceway. And then out on the pylon, they will occupy two spaces as shown in the proofs. Does everybody have a copy of the proofs that were sent?
Yes, they were with the application. Did everybody on the board get a chance to review them? Yeah, so we don't need to share a screen.
Greg, let me know if you want me to pull them up. I'm guessing that
I'm looking right at it, but board,
Mike is participating via phone, it seems.
right.
I apologize. It kicked me off twice when I tried to log in earlier. So this is the only way I could get connected.
No problem. We appreciate you joining us. Board members, questions or comments?
It looks like the area is as per approved area. Although, is that two places? Yeah,
Yes,
Yes,
it's
it's-
two suites. So unit 30 and 31 the wall is coming down between those two to make into one larger space. So they will have the sign band above each suite.
Are the size of the letters the same?
So you have 23 inches on. Well, let me pull this information up here. Bear with me.
So, Greg, it says that on the Liquor World side, they're 23.5 inches high. Is that correct? And then on the fine wines and liquor, 23 inches high?
Yes, that is correct. It's just the scaling to occupy the space correctly.
Can you see my screen?
Yeah, I see it on my screen. I just didn't, I
Yeah.
didn't realize. Just saw the 23 and the 23.5.
Yeah.
So is the name of the business Liquor World, I take it, and then fine wines and liquors? Go ahead.
Yes, Liquor World, fine wines and liquors. That's their slogan, their name and slogan at their other locations.
Gotcha. Is there any way to make the slogan a slightly smaller font? So it just seems like it rambles on. I'm wondering, if Liquor World's, I like when things are sort of accessory.
Do you mean adjusting the size of fine wine and liquor?
Yeah, is there any way just to make that a little smaller so it's not quite the same size as a font?
Sure. So if we
Yeah.
have 23.5 on Liquor World and 23 on fine wines and liquors, what size would you like to see that?
7. I don't know. I would just, if the name of the business is Liquor World, if it was maybe 2/3 the size,
So if we went to 18 is a very common size on the machine. So
yeah,
18
I
inch
think the
letters.
name should pop for it, I just think that would look better than have this long rambling sign. Board members, you guys, what do you think about that?
Yeah, yes, I agree that subordinating the fine wines and liquor side would be appropriate.
Agreed.
what are the details of the illumination on this?
This is internally illuminated. So standard channel letters, LED illumination inside each letter.
Yeah, so each letter illuminates separately, standalone
Yes.
letters, as opposed to like a light box,
Exactly.
which is the
So-
direction we always try to pull people to halo letters or channel letters.
So we can certainly adjust the 18. Could I ask that this be approved on that contingency without having to come back for another meeting in a month?
Yes, yeah, we're a nice board. We would do that. At
Thank you.
least we like to think we're a nice board.
There's some places are different. You never know.
So,
Wow.
oh, go ahead, Deb.
Since the fine wines and liquors would be a smaller font, are you thinking that would be centered or aligned with the bottom of the liquor world?
Yes, we would have to center that. So the building steps down, as you can see in the picture, it steps down a bit on that side. And so you have a lower roof line. So it would just be centered in that space. The idea is with the 23 that when you're standing in that parking lot 100 yards out, you can easily read it. And I think that you could probably still read it at 18.
Greg, would we also want to see the same kind of proportionality out front as well on the main sign?
No, that one, I mean, those are pretty small. Stefan, can you call up the pylon sign? This is your screen, right?
Yes, yeah. I don't have the, yeah, I don't either. I
know
don't
it
have
was-
the pylon sign.
Okay, it was in,
That part of the package?
it was in permitized, so I'll escape,
I can do that as well if you want.
no, so I'll just go take a
Okay.
quick peek here.
You want me to stop sharing or?
Do you guys want to see this quick? You want me to share this real quick? It actually works. I'll do this real quick. Bob, it's kind of done that way anyway, so I'll share my screen real quick. There, did it work?
Yes.
That works.
So you can see that, what was that word, Peter? Oh, subordination. That's subordination we're looking for. It's already happening there.
Yeah, I actually like the different font that does achieve the objective that we have requested.
That's a good point. So I didn't even notice that this is a different, because the cues are different, right? So will the fonts match? The font of Liquor World is slightly different from Fine Wine and Liquors on this pylon sign. Will that be the same on the facade?
That's an interesting point. Yeah, I didn't notice that. I didn't notice that earlier. Let me just look at this. Yeah, the Q is different, isn't it? So
Oh, yeah,
I
the
think they're-
W's are different, the O's, they're all different.
Well,
yeah, so
one's
which
on
And I don't think
street,
it's a scaling, because look at the L's are different.
yeah.
so I believe they may have a font that they use on the pylons to better fill the space. But if you
Yeah, but
you
if you,
prefer-
I mean to cut you off, but if you look at the facade, it's the same thing. It's two different
Thank you.
fonts. So,
well,
I mean,
I'm not arguing that. I can see that right now. So what I'm guessing is that they have a font that they try to use on their pylons
sure.
and then they have a font that they use for channel letters. So if you want the two to be the same, I could certainly match one to the other.
Oh, I think you misunderstood. I think the font, there are two different fonts, but they're two different in both locations. I think Liquor World is the same font on the pylon as it is on the building, and then the same for the slogan. or
Oh
tag.
yes, yeah. I'm sorry, I see that.
So-
It's a little
So,
small. on my phone.
and you can see, I think it looks nicer where it is a smaller font here. So hopefully that will translate through on the facade as well.
So long as the fabrication of the channel letters for the subordinated side, is not more difficult to an extreme extent.
No, I mean, we can make it at any style, at any type. So basically, we're still at the same change, right? We're still at the 18
Yeah,
inches that you're looking
yeah.
for? Okay,
Yeah,
no other
same thing.
changes. All right.
All right, I'm gonna stop sharing. All right. So, the board or Stephanie, if anybody has any more questions or comments, otherwise, if you care to make a motion.
Motion to approve the eternally illuminated sign at 25 Robert Drive if the subordinate part of the sign is reduced to 18 inches in height. Stetson.
Kevin, second.
There's a second. Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none. All those in favor, Strange, aye. Peter DeShane,
Aye.
Deb Balsaric, Robert Stetson,
Aye.
and Amos Kedem.
Aye.
All right. So you will, and forgive me, sir, I forget your, Mike. Mike, you can just make those changes and submit them to Stephanie. And she'll make sure it's consistent with what we've approved. And then she'll issue whatever paperwork's needed for the building permit.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
All right, thanks so much. Good luck. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right. So next, Stephanie, I'm assuming 464 is continuing to our next meeting, correct?
Yes,
Which is
is that right, Suzanne?
October 20.
Correct, no, November 7th.
November 7th.
Yep.
Would someone care to make a motion to continue 464 Foundry special permit and site plan endorsement to 11/7?
So moved. Stetson.
Kevin, second.
Karen, the second. All those, any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none. All those in favor, Greg Strange, aye. Deb Balsaric. Peter DeShane,
Aye.
Amos Kedem,
Aye.
Robert Stetson.
Aye.
All right. Très bien. Next up, we have board business. So let's see. Why don't we do the meeting minutes? Let's get that. Oh, yeah, get the meeting minutes out of the way. Anybody have any changes or edits?
I think I started off with the center school discussion, kind of at least mentioning that I would be more supportive, of that concept in general, where more clearly delineated that the Yardley rink portion was going to remain as such for public use, like meaning free public use at most normal hours. So.
And that was not in the minutes? I don't have them in front of me.
No.
Okay, so Suzanne, could you add that? Did you get that?
This can be added, yes.
Okay.
And if I suppose the Chickadee Lane comments somehow indicate that we rushed that conversation along, and I made like a quick motion, I'm not sure how we could best elaborate,
Oh, I think those
possibly discuss.
reflect, we're discussing that again tonight, so I don't think those,
Yeah, sure. Okay, so long as.
I think you're fine with that. I don't think it seems rushed, and I think,
Yeah.
I mean,
okay, so long as.
we decided that night not to make a comment, so we,
Mhm.
we don't really need to explain that, so.
Okay, makes sense.
And again, especially since we're taking it back up.
Motion to approve the minutes as amended.
Second. Stetson.
Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none. All those in favor, Greg Strange, aye. Robert Stetson,
Aye.
Amos Kedem,
Aye.
Peter DeShane,
Aye.
Deb Balsaric. Aye. All right. Why don't we, since we just said that, why don't we follow up? Let's have a discussion. Follow up on the administrative appeal number 21-10, 6 Chickadee Lane. And Stephanie, correct me, or feel free to fill in the blanks, but as you know, at the last meeting, the board chose not to make any comment. And then two things. I think there were a member or two that perhaps was under the impression that this board, or an earlier version of this, but that the planning board did not issue the special permit. I think there was some confusion over that. So that, and if that was a reason someone didn't want to make a comment, I thought we should probably circle back once, because I know the ZBA hearing had been continued, and they had expressed thoughts they were hoping that the planning board would issue a comment. Was that, did I say that accurately, Stephanie?
Yes.
Okay. So I went back, looked through it, and I just, I'm just wondering if anyone here has any comments from the last time. I would start with this, excuse me, that I thought reviewing it, the planning board did approve it. It was prior to the adoption of the Town for the Right to Farm Act, which I don't know if that's relevant, but when you think about the permit for a common driveway, looking back, finding number 4 in the original decision, the requested use will not create undue traffic congestion or unduly impair pedestrian safety. Residential traffic, the requested use will not impair the integrity or character of the district or adjoining zones, nor be detrimental to the health, safety, or welfare of the inhabitants of Easton. And then a little further down, looking at the portion of the maintenance agreement that was quoted, it says, said common driveway will provide access to and allow for use of the 2 residential lots within the property. The driveway shall be used only for common enjoyment and use of the owners of lots 22A and 22B, et cetera, et cetera. The driveway shall not be used in a manner which is inconsistent with the residential character of the property, and no dangerous, unduly noise or offensive use shall be made of any part of the driveway, and nothing shall be done thereon which will result in the disturbance of the tranquility of the property, or will become an annoyance or nuisance to any or all of the owners of lots within the entire subdivision. And thinking back to other points in the draft where it brought out differences between, how their claim that this was a commercial use and could only be considered a farm if it was a commercial use, a solely commercial use, and it's not. The main use of this is clearly as residential. So I was struck by those, and I would be curious to hear if any the opinion of the lawyer on the board.
I did spend some more time with it. Quite frankly, I still think I'm at the same spot that I was when we talked about this last time. I think you make an interesting point about the shared driveway, but they really haven't, at least my interpretation of what they're asking for isn't related to the driveway itself. And I did notice in the papers that there is already a proceeding in the Superior Court. I took a very quick look at the docket over the weekend, and it does look like they've gotten some relief on that from the judge. It's preliminary relief, but they did get something with respect to the shared driveway. So I think that's a very good point, and it's an astute observation, but I don't think it's what they're looking for here. The question to me is whether or not the principal use here is a commercial farm. Because if it is, then I think both, as I said last time, Dover Amendment and the right to farm bylaw that we have here in town probably give it some cover. Now, I think you've sort of concluded based on your review, Greg, that the principal use here is residential. I'm not saying I disagree with you. it wasn't that clear to me in looking at all of this. I mean, they've got, it looks like from a, I've looked at some of the cases in the past about whether or not in the verbiage under the Dover Amendment is whether it's a primary use is commercial. It's a little bit different than our bylaws definition of principal, but the cases, a lot of them look at coverage, of the actual acreage. And I didn't see anything. I mean, maybe we could kind of work backwards on that, but it wasn't clear to me what the amount of coverage of this lot was in terms of how much of it's used for commercial farming and how much of it's used for the residential building. And what's the scale of this operation? I looked at the website. It wasn't really that clear to me what the scale of the operation was. I didn't really understand what the application for the foraging license or permit, what that even was. So I kind of, and maybe you guys know or understand these things better than me, but I guess what I'm saying is without a little bit more information about how this property is actually being used for these farming purposes, it's hard for me to decide if the principal or primary use, I guess, is residential versus commercial farm. Because if it's commercial farm, I think they're probably protected for better or for worse under the right to farm or under the Dover Amendment. Those are my thoughts.
I know there was, and I'm not trying to dispute anything you said. You're the lawyer. I know there was something in the brief that was sent to us. Talked about, was it at 10% was the trigger? Was the maximum you could have for farming or for use of the area? And there was a site plan showing, they talked about how they'd cleared for pasture. So it seemed like it was over.
Yeah, but that's, so let me touch on that, because I was looking at that as well. And what that is and Deb, you and I have talked about this in the past, but basically the way that we've defined accessory use is that the coverage is less than 10%. But I guess when it comes to whether or not the principal or primary use of this lot is commercial farming, I don't think it just means that if it's more than 10%. I think, ironically, I think you're right. I think the brief sort of concedes that the commercial farm is more than 10%. And so therefore it's not an accessory use. But I think there's somewhere in between where even though it might not be an accessory use, it might not also rise to the level of a primary use. And that's what we need to figure out. Is this a primary or principal use? In which case, I think they've got the right to kind of proceed in the manner that they're proceeding. If it's not, if it's somewhere in between accessory and primary, then I think there's probably some ability to regulate it. And then maybe we look at the special permit, and for all the reasons that you've pointed out, maybe this is something we ought to make a recommendation for. It just wasn't clear to me. And I will say, and I didn't study the briefing in the Superior Court by any stretch. I just didn't have the time to get into it. But as Peter or Amos was saying last time, there's always two sides to each story. And there were an awful lot of facts that were presented by the Wolves in regards to the fact that this was a primary use. And the judge specifically found in his decision that there were some pretty good arguments that this is actually protected by right to farm in Dover. Now, that's a preliminary decision. It's not a final judgment on the merits. But that, to me, suggests that there are some compelling facts on both sides of the aisle. And so it's hard to make a determination based on one side of the story, which is all we're getting here.
Sure. So let me ask you a question, because I was curious, maybe you can educate me. So think back. So this was approved in 2005, and at the time that was prior to the right to farm, and it was approved for up to 3 residential lots. And it clearly calls out, single family home, etc. So, okay, so over time, someone adds this barn without a building permit, and I just kind of laugh because I couldn't add a barn without a building permit, but add the barn without a building permit, and then now has this operation going on, whatever it is. So let's just say for a second, it's commercial, right? How would that become the primary use, where this is still a residential zone? It's still single family. That was the original use, and there was nothing in the special permit specifically speaks to it can't, or to, to the stuff I said earlier, and the road can't take commercial traffic. So how would it? I'm just curious, how would it transition to agriculture or farming? How would it transition to a different primary use with the house still being there, used in the same consistent manner?
Yeah, I mean, that's ironically, it might be the reverse. How could you prevent it from being the primary use? That may be the question. And that's what, that's where Dover in the Dover Amendment although I think there was a significant change in 06, the Dover Amendment obviously long preceded the right to farm. And I was really thinking of this more, I think the Dover Amendment on commercial farming goes back to the 60s or 70s. I don't remember, maybe even before that. I'm not sure. But I guess the question is, if its primary use is commercial agriculture, whether or not we would even have the right to restrict it at all, or even require a special permit, because the Dover Amendment specifically mentions, with respect to commercial agriculture, that you cannot restrict commercial agriculture operations via special permit. So I don't,
Could I ask a question, Greg?
Sure, go ahead, Stephanie.
My understanding of the Dover Amendment is that you cannot restrict it such that you couldn't operate there. So this is a change if this were a change in use, as you're suggesting it might be, Bob, wouldn't it be subject to site plan review by the planning board, which again, you can't unduly restrict. And it's really public safety, health, traffic, those type of things that you'd be looking at. Doesn't that apply?
Maybe.
In this instance. And the right to farm bylaw is not a regulatory structure. It's primarily a statement that the town is in support of local agriculture and protecting, the right to farm under the zoning as it exists.
Well, but we allow agricultural
Yeah,
uses in all of our
in
residential.
Yes. Yep, it is
No.
allowed.
Right, and if this were, say, just a public way, it would be much more difficult to bring the common driveway, type of issue into play, unless it were just like a very large farm, right, on a smaller road that might not be able to handle that truck traffic or something. But
And that's a good point, Peter, because I think to your point that I think you were making, Bob, about the special permit for the common driveway was issued before the property was being used as a farm.
Right. No, I think the common driveway issue there are issues there. It just doesn't strike me that that's what they're asking us to do anything about the common driveway. They're asking us to, enter an order to prevent commercial farming operation.
Well, no, first of all, we're just being asked to the appeal is with the ZBA.
With the ZBA, yeah.
And we're just being asked to comment on this. And I think
I misspoke. I agree.
And I think so the ZBA is looking to us saying, okay, you guys, your board, okay, not this version of it, but this board approved the common driveway and the the common driveway in the state lots, or so let me share. So we talked about this last week, and I'm not trying to, if this board still does not, Stephanie, do we know the date of the next ZBA hearing? Is it prior to our next meeting?
November 15th.
So we meet again. Okay. So, because I know when we talked last week, someone was like, well, if ZBA is going to decide this, and we're not all lawyers, and we're looking at this, and kind of to your point, we saw the brief that came in. It was impressive. It said a lot, sort of just from one side, and and I kind of sensed the room. Everybody was not very comfortable, which is fine. We don't have to comment on this. But, and it's interesting, you know, this raises lots of questions. I look at the agriculture, look at our bylaw today, agricultural uses in a residential zone. You know, number 2, farming on less than 5 acres of land or less than 2 qualified acres. May include livestock or poultry, but not swine, provided that any building housing livestock or poultry be not less than 50 feet from the property boundary. About, you know, so it was, then there's a, you know, then there's a farming where it talks about agriculture. But I do wonder, it does seem that, you know, the special permit does say no commercial traffic. And now I'm not a lawyer, so I don't, but it does seem that this is, if and again, this is, and here's where it gets tricky because we're just reading what's submitted to us. It's not like we can, you know, question the applicants.
Right.
This isn't a court of law. You know, it says up to 70 animals. I haven't seen anybody argue against that. And, you know, and so, you know, and then you think of all the, you know, I went on YouTube, there were some videos of the different, you know, so it's like, is this, and this is tricky, you know, I get it, but is this a commercial operation? And when folks bought into this area, invested, you know, we all know typically our houses are some of the largest investments, very often the largest single investment of our life. Were they anticipating that they would be next to a potentially, you know, a commercial livestock operation? So I understand the pain here. I understand the angst. I don't know, and it's intimidating. Let's face it, you know, it's intimidating being in our seat. We're just residents that try to help out, and but Bob, you're used to this. You're always in a court of law. You know, I'm just a simple designer.
All right, yeah, I mean, we can't say that much more.
Doesn't make it any easier, Greg.
I'm sorry, Peter. What?
Oh, I was saying, yeah, we can't say anything, you know, anything better or more knowledgeable than Bob did, but you know, we can sort of talk out our thoughts here and maybe try to just hopefully figure out what to.
Help me out understand, if there was a special permit and the special permit established a series of conditions or rules by which that special permit was issued, and those were not respected, they are violated, they are violating that special permit. Now, are they violating bylaws and right to farm or anything? I don't know that, but based on the special permit, they are in violation. No, I don't understand. You
Yeah,
explain
and
that
I
to-
think that comes back to, so kind of 2 things. And again, going back to what Bob was saying, so under the Dover Amendment, you can't substantially restrict agricultural operations within your community. We allow it by right in the residential district. The common driveway was permitted before the agricultural operation began, which my understanding is the Wolves say is a commercial operation. They meet the standard for that. So the question is, should they have come before, should there have been an application to modify the special permit to allow the agricultural use? Would that be something that if they had come to site plan, you know, perhaps that should have been a direction that they were pointed in to come to the planning board for site plan approval for the use.
That can be a comment that they should have come back and say, you issue to me a special permit. I don't want to
And-
violate. This is what is going to happen.
Yeah, and I'm putting
And if
that
you don't
out.
do that, if you don't respect the decisions that are made by the board for special permit, there has to be consequences to that.
But usually you're talking about dimensional regulations. You can't, I don't believe under Dover, and I'm not a Dover expert by any stretch, but I don't believe under Dover, especially on the commercial agricultural provision, which if nobody has ever read it and wants to, just another reason on why to dislike lawyers, try reading that
We don't need
provision.
any more, Bob. No.
Yeah, I know.
I'm kidding.
Go ahead and do that for your homework assignment. Check out the commercial agricultural provision of the Dover Amendment. It is like the longest run-on sentence that has been created in history. It's got to be close to 500 words. It just a run-on sentence. So you could try to figure it out. But I guess one thing that sticks out as being pertinent to this discussion is it says you can't restrict it if it's a primary commercial agricultural use via special permit. And so that to me, and I agree with you, Stephanie, that you can regulate it. But to me, we're talking about dimensional regulations at that point, kind of like what Greg just talked about with the building for housing of livestock being not less than 50 feet from the property boundary, things of that nature. And it can't be unduly restrictive. And I've seen this dispute over educational facilities a dozen times. I haven't seen it quite as much in my own personal practice on commercial agriculture, but I think the principles are essentially the same. So that I don't know that you would be able to get a site plan review beyond just signing off on, hey, are you 50 feet back or 100, whatever it is, whatever the side setbacks are or front setbacks and things of that nature. So I don't know. I guess my point is, I think Greg asks a very good question. At what point does it change over? What's the mechanism? But I almost feel like we're in the opposite position to say, what can we do at this point to change what they've already done? I mean, looking at what Kevin Grenier wrote, he already pointed out that there were some building code violations. I mean, there may very well be some problems with that building. I mean, they clearly didn't get a permit up front, so that's got to be addressed. Beyond that, I don't know what we can do. If it's a primary use, by the way, I'm not ready to concede that this is the primarily a commercial agricultural use. I just don't know what's going on at that property.
And there is no definition of what will constitute the primary use that we can put it down and say this define primary use.
Well, it's interesting because I found a contradiction between our bylaw and I'll call it the brief, right? If you read our bylaw, if you go to Appendix A, excuse me, and under principal uses, it goes residential and it goes down. And so under C, agricultural is what I read earlier, okay? Then if you go further down, and it's interesting, in their brief, it says, list farm, it says it's listed as, it also lists as an accessory use. But I think that what happens is it's also allowed as an accessory use. So I would, again, I'm not a lawyer, but I would say this was approved originally as a house or as as 3 residential lots. So those were the primary uses. That's all that was there. Actually built one of the houses, so I knew what was there. It was just 3 houses. Then subsequently, 14, 15, 16 years later, this operation begins. But how does that, again, right, there was no special permit. I would say if they didn't get rid of the house is still lived in, it's used the exact same way. Whether it has more or, maybe the kids have grown up and moved away, that's irrelevant. It's still a single family house. So that use hasn't changed, that primary use hasn't changed. Because where in our bylaw does, what action would need to be taken to make the agricultural, the farming operation, the primary use? How does that supersede the original, right?
What's funny? You were just that made me think to look at our definition of principal use. And I'd been so focused on the first sentence, I didn't really look at the second sentence. The second sentence, and this is from our bylaw under use, principal. Any other use within the main structure or the use of any other structure or land on the same lot, and incidental or supplementary to the principal use, and under this chapter shall be considered an accessory use. So to me, that almost means, and I'm just throwing it out there for discussion purposes, that if it's not an accessory use, then it's the principal use. And if it's the principal use, then I think we're in squarely within C1, because this is more than 5 acres, right? This
Mhm.
lot?
Yes, yes.
Then we're in C1 territory. And I don't agree with the way that they've gone about this. And I certainly agree with Greg's comments. I feel very sympathetic to these neighbors. But I do kind of feel like our hands are a little bit tied. If that definition makes sense to you guys.
What about, let me ask you a question, because our role in this, right? Let's get away from the uses and all that. What about, this was about a common driveway, which had very specific allowances of use. Because, this driveway goes on, doesn't it go on 3 different pieces of land?
It serves.
I know it
three-
certainly goes over the Bennett's piece, and then onto the Wolves, but so does that, I mean, there was something in here about, I mean, whether it's primary or not, this certainly seems like a commercial operation. And the special permit clearly says no commercial use of this driveway. I mean, I know we're getting caught up on it, but I mean, really, because this isn't an issue over
Right,
the
but that's the
bylaws. This is an issue
question.
over the special permit, which, and the special permit was for the common driveway.
So I think the question there, Greg, and again, I'll defer to Bob, is whether commercial in this instance, it matters whether it's primary use or not. I mean, again, the owners have indicated it is a commercial use, whether it meets the definition of primary or principal, and if the common driveway decision specifically states that it cannot be used for commercial use, then they would seem to be in violation. What do you think
I
about
mean,
that?
from my perspective, that kind of, it just suggests that we would be restricting this commercial farm in a manner that wouldn't allow it to operate
Even though these
by a special permit, which again,
common-
is
Right,
yeah,
or is that, I mean,
common
is-
driveway precedes
Mhm.
the use as an agricultural use.
Right, but yeah, I mean, so things have changed in Easton, but, if we were 100 years ago saying that having a principal residence and a commercial farm, together, or somehow not in harmony with the town would have been out of the question, obviously, and there was no zoning bylaw to that extent then anyways. But now it seems that because of the way the town has evolved and perceptions have, that a farmhouse, either if you have a farmhouse and a commercial farm on the same property, that one has to be the principal, one has to be the accessory. And that is the only way that, farmers can do business, in our town at least, right? That's the way I look at it. I'm not saying whether it's right or wrong, but that's kind of the idea I get here, whether it applies to something with a common driveway or not. If we, once we get into accessory and primary, then that's sort of saying, okay, so that's how we do things in this town. If you want to have a commercial farm and a farmhouse on the same property, of any like actual, commercial value.
But I think, to your point, this isn't 100 years ago. And when this enclave was developed, originally this was a Doug King subdivision. In fact, Mr. King was going to build his house down here, and decided not to, and actually sold the lot to the Bennetts. Actually, no, sold the lot to the Wolves. And I think it's safe to say that the 3 families that bought houses in here were probably attracted to the fact that they're secluded. It's down a very long private driveway out in the woods. It backs up to the old, and say there was thought. Now again, this is before right to farming and but right in there it says no commercial traffic. So to me that denotes, okay, they were looking for what this had been developed for, what Chickadee Lane had been developed for, a quiet kind of exclusive subdivision. And that doesn't make them bad people, right? There's nothing wrong with that. People like to live in all different types of circumstances. If this was, just another older, longer road in Easton, whether it be Pequantucket where I live or Washington Street or something, and some, there's up the street from me, there's a farm that's been there 150 years, and it has really smelly horses and cows. Not smelly to me. I grew up on a farm, but it was there. You know, when you moved, you knew what you were. I always laughed when some people bought some houses next door. There's a new subdivision, and people came up to me complaining one time about the smell of the cows.
Well, I mean, yeah.
Well, why'd you
I
buy the
understand.
house?
I'm with you. You know, I could show you other uses on a residential lot where, you know, you thought there was a nice farmhouse or an old estate house. And all of a sudden you have, you know, 20 new neighbors, right? That's just.
Right. No,
yeah,
absolutely. But
maybe
here's the
not-
thing:
maybe not
someone
in
had the
end.
foresight,
Mhm.
someone had the vision, or maybe it's not, but someone said, "Okay, we want to say what we would like here and what we wouldn't like to have here."
Mhm.
And it was part of the approval that they got from this board. Now, none of us were on the board at the time, but they came in and they said a bunch of things. So amongst them was, okay, you know, no commercial traffic. They didn't want, you know, they wanted this to be a quiet, you know, residential area. So, you know, after that, I mean, I look at this and I can't speak eloquently like Bob did. I know nothing of the law, but if everything that I read and hear is true, then, and everything that I see and that I've heard from other folks in the area, certainly sounds like it's a commercial operation. And so I look at the special permit for the road, the common driveway, I should say, and it says, you know, no commercial operation. So that, you know, so
Is it-
yeah,
is it-
you know.
But
Is it possible?
I don't want this to get lost on anyone. I think that what you're saying is true. And I do believe, again, based on the very cursory review of the Superior Court case that I looked at over the weekend, that there were restrictive covenants that were part of this development that that prevented the type of use that you're talking about, and that the judge already agreed with the neighbors on this point and has entered an injunction preventing the commercial use of the driveway in that manner. And I guess what I'm getting at is that may very well be fine, and having a restrictive covenant like that doesn't necessarily implicate Dover, and it doesn't implicate right to farm. And so if there is such a restrictive covenant that addresses that issue, great. And, you know, we don't really have any role in enforcing that. But I think the question for us is whether or not we have a role in, or have even the power, put aside a role, whether we have the power to do something about the commercial farming operation based on the special permit. And again, this is just one person's opinion. Whether I'm just like you guys. Just because I'm a lawyer doesn't mean I have any special knowledge over this better than you guys. But my personal read is that the legislature and, you know, boards of Easton past have made some legislative determinations that commercial agriculture is something that we want people to do and to use as a use even in residential districts. And so there's not much we as a board can do about it from my perspective, if that is indeed the primary use.
Bob, that can be the comment, that the use for agriculture is not something because of the existing laws, we cannot prohibit, we cannot do anything about that. But the part of the special permit and the use of that common driveway for commercial uses, yes, is something that is protected, and we think it should be somehow enforced. So you can have both things. They are not mutually exclusive. They are two different subjects, if you will.
I think they're mutually exclusive to
Clarification.
us. Sorry, Deb.
Just get a clarification. So, well, one part, I'm not familiar with the Dover amendment. So I definitely, I need more information on that, but.
If you're not from
following up
Dover,
to-
you can't have a farm, basically. is what that's-
Following up to what the other things we were talking about, and when I read the that attachment that Peter had sent us the link to. So some of the questions I have in my mind are, so everyone is saying that in a residential use and agricultural use, farming is allowed. I'm looking at our table of uses. I'm looking at agricultural uses are yes, it's allowed. Is there a definition? No, there's not for farm or agriculture in our bylaw that I could find. But if you look at under office, business, financial, and professional in a residential district, it's not allowed. And I guess I'm wondering, is there a distinction between a right to farm versus a right to farm for profit?
Well, if you're sort of directing that to me, I think that the whole idea, at least again, this is speaking more to Dover Amendment, but the whole idea is that it's got to be a commercial farming operation to have those protections, and there are ways that you can prove that up. But yeah, I think that that is specifically protected by the Dover Amendment, and I think that the right to farm bylaw here is a little bit more liberal. That's than even Dover.
Mhm.
That's my interpretation.
Thing that says something like that it only applied. There was something in the document that said something about that it only applied to commercial farming or something like that. I guess to find it. I guess I'm just wondering, so if you have more than 5 acres, you're saying in our state, anyone can have a for-profit farm in a residential district without any question?
In our town.
The state thing?
Well, it's slightly different. Like I said, I think that our right to farm bylaw is a little bit more generous than even the Dover Amendment requires. That's, again, I wasn't here when it was drafted. I don't know if any of us here were, but that's
I was part of that with the Agricultural Commission. And my understanding,
11 or 12.
yes, either 11 or 12. I think it was probably 2012.
I mean, does anybody recall if the idea was to make it coextensive of Dover, or if the idea was to make it a little bit broader?
It was always my understanding in working on it in the agricultural commissions at the time that it wasn't a regulatory structure and it did not supersede the local zoning. So again, it was more supportive in nature, and it was the whole, oh my gosh. I want to say meditation, that's not the right word. Conflict resolution to assist when there was a conflict between the farm operation, the agricultural operation, and abutters, to try to bring them together to mediate and see if they could resolve the issue through some kind of assist from the Agricultural Commission. And in fact, at the time, I had been contacted by Ms. Bennett, but at that time, the initial complaints were brought forward. The Agricultural Commission was not meeting on any kind of regular basis. There were members that had dropped off and they didn't have a full board, and it was very difficult to get them pulled together to actually have that kind of mediation.
Well, and just so I'm clear on what I'm saying, when I say right to farm, I'm probably lumping in a bunch of different things that have gone on in town in that
Yes.
regard, but I'm specifically talking to the table of uses that Deb was.
Yeah, I think the town was very supportive. You can see that in the wetlands protection bylaw in town, where it mirrors the state regulations. It's not any stricter, whereas most of the local bylaw has more strict regulations of wetland resource areas and what you can do in them. So in my time working for the town was very supportive of agricultural operations, especially existing ones, but certainly not against new agricultural operations too, as older farms stopped operating and land was used up for development purposes.
I have a question. On the Board of Appeals variance, was that to allow an additional lot to access like the common driveway?
Yes,
And is that for the farm property or for a different property?
it was for I believe it was for the farm property. So you look, and I was looking again through.
Yeah, I'm reading it right now.
today.
I'm trying to listen to
There-
everyone.
I
and I've
think
already
the
read this whole
original-
thing, but,
Right, and the original special permit for the common driveway for the 2 lots was issued in 97. And then the special permit to add the 3rd lot was issued in 2005.
Yeah, I'm somewhat familiar with that, where I might have worked like 30 years ago. Is that that's over the bridge, right? This subject property, the farm?
That is my understanding.
Okay, so, I mean, I just have an idea. I don't want to, move too hastily on this and, maybe not have too much disagreement here. But, it does seem that, the special permit for the common driveway and the issuing of the subsequent variance to allow the additional lot seem to all like have wording that mention, integrity of the neighborhood and, the intended character being residential. So I don't know if there are a way that we could, comment on that, but without being too like, peculiar about it, since we don't, I don't know if that's the way anyone was thinking about approaching it. What do you think, Greg?
Well, I was
like-
going to recommend this because we've done a deep dive,
Mhm.
and it's an interesting issue. It's an important issue, and we have, and instead of trying, we meet on the 7th. ZBA doesn't hear this to the 15th, so my thought was to maybe just address this again. We have this talk, maybe wrap this up now. Or, once everybody's said it, and then let's digest it a little bit because I've heard something. We've all heard what we've heard now for the first time from each other, and
Yeah.
give it a little more. I mean, I agree kind of where you're going, but I'm just thinking we don't have to wrap this tonight, and maybe
Yeah.
we can be a little more thoughtful and
Mhm.
wait for Bob to do some more research.
Yeah, no, we have time on our side to maybe hear someone, there's a lot of different opinions out there, so maybe we'll get some more information.
Yeah, and frankly, there's so much paper. I mean, I actually want to go back and reread some of it a little bit more.
I also wonder, like, I don't understand quite the extent of the kind of, say, like, commercial truck traffic delivering hay and moving stuff out. I don't know if the town has that to enforce in other ways, or that we would be concerned that bridge is a pretty sturdy bridge, as far as I know, the way it was built, but I don't know if it's, made to just handle like, repeated, I mean, are there tractor trailers, or are these just like an F-250 pulling a trailer of hay that, weighs like less than a big boat? I have no idea.
No, I mean, I saw a couple of videos. There was a video of a hay truck, which was sort of in between. It was a flatbed, but a very large flatbed.
Mhm. Yeah, it doesn't weigh more than whatever.
And the whole purpose of it, the narrative with it, in fact, Ms. Bennett yelling at the truck driver on it was he couldn't. I remember that property pretty well. How he couldn't back out of there, I don't understand. But anyways, he chose to back onto their lawn and get out after she said no. So, but I mean, there's I mean, it's interesting because it's troubling that. I'm just, as a citizen, I've designed and built buildings in this town for 40 years, and we've always had to get permits. And I know that has nothing to do with what we're talking about, but boy, to go in, this barn's been up for years. No one knew about it. It has electricity to it, this and that, and it was within the 100-foot, as I understand, the 200-foot river, if I recall, when I built that house. And they didn't have to get a permit. And okay, maybe the paperwork will be cleaned up, but so it just seems that this should be looked at more.
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, we have people that tear down houses when they're not supposed to. They cut down all the trees when they're not supposed to, and then it kind of falls on the town boards and staff's laps to figure out do some damage control and figure out where to go. Right.
I think we need the information. What is the number of animals, the areas, the traffic?
It said 70. It estimated 70.
70.
Yeah. No, I don't. One thing, and I don't mean to cut you off, Thomas. I'll let you finish in a second. What might be helpful, and I haven't done this, I may go back and watch the hearing, because the information that we have is from the complainants. What would that? the defendant, well,
The petition.
the petitioners, thank you. And, but if watching and I know in that, and right there clearly says they don't have access, they can't trespass, they don't have access to the site, but they would estimate it to be 70 animals. And so I'm thinking, one of the things I want to do is go back and watch the ZBA hearing, because then the defendants, so, the wolves, hear what they have to say.
And also, I mean, if town council still has office hours, we don't have to just keep putting Bob on the spot here, we could have town council whom we contract to kind of look at these things for us, help us out a little bit. He doesn't have to pay him to, do a special opinion, but, however that process works with that.
Mm-hmm, sure.
So, town council is not involved in this? Is town
I'm-
council not involved in this?
He wants to know if town
Um,
council is involved in this.
They are involved.
Okay.
All right, so why don't everybody good with kind of pausing it here till the 7th?
Motion to pause till the next meeting.
Second, Stetson.
That's our first motion to pause we've ever had. All those in favor? All right, let's see. So I know we have the MBTA. Do we have anything besides MBTA?
Wayfinding can be.
Oh,
pretty-
wait, that's you, right?
Yes, can be pretty fast.
All right, let's see what you got.
Let me share.
I have to go. Someone's at my door. Keep going. I'll be right back.
Can you see the presentation?
Yes,
All right. So last year I was your delegate on the Easton Wayfinding work group. And here's what we are with this at this point. I participated on that group, and the selection of the design was finalized in December 2021. That was the end of last year. This year passed, I think there were more detailed designs, and bidding is going to go out. This is a timeline in November, next month. Job assignment probably by December or January, depend on negotiations and who gets the job. An execution, or at least this is what they told me, they would like to finish this by June of 2023. A little explanation about the process that led to the selection of the design. There is a list here of all the participants. Not everyone participated in all the meetings, but a lot of entities, a lot of people from different committees participated in trying to figure out what's the design that better fit Easton. There were 4 meetings I participated. I think there was at least 2 more. And after each meeting, there were iterations. So they will bring, based on the comments and the opinions, they will bring back to the next meeting. The main considerations were the logo design elements that were appropriate to the town character. I cannot tell you how many discussions about the shovels and the arcs and the compass were there, and who wanted that, who didn't want that. Then there was a lot of discussion about aesthetics that, as you know, opinions and preference, fonts, color schemes, arrangement, etc. There were, especially from the Commission on Disability, a lot of input about the need for these signs to be readable, clear, have good contrast. Okay, so basically this represent a generic sign that has all the elements: the arc, the shovels, the compass pointing east, and the colors that were picked up by that. This was designed by a company, Beta. And the idea was to erect signs around Easton that keep our character, our symbols, be pleasant to the eye, and accommodate some practical issues. I will go to show the type of signs that we're thinking about. There is another file that Stephanie sent me that has a lot more details about where these signs actually are going to be. I believe that this was going to be used to address with the vendors and the bidding process. But as can you see, there are directional signs and there are all type of other types. So there are gateways, as you say, trailblazers, destination signs like directionals, banners that give you directions where you want to go in the town with all the places. Then there is parking and all the other type of so as you remember, last year some of you gave me some feedback, and I was able to do that. I will try to see if I can show this one. Let me. So this is a little more detailed, just to show and tell a little. Again, the colors and the symbols, but this actually has dimensions. You can see dimensions now, and for the different type of signs. Here they start actually telling you where those signs are going to be, and there are pretty nice pictures of different locations. So this is when you enter Easton. Remember, there is different places, different type of signs, simpler ones. And then in other locations, you have signs for actual buildings, like the town office, the police, etc., fire department, schools. So I really don't know if they are going to do all of those. I don't know the details, but it looks like they cover most of the signage around town for places, directional signs, to parking, to actually a pretty good job of taking pictures of town and placing the signs, and and that's it. If you guys have any questions, I don't know if I will have answers, but
Yeah, it looks nice. What kind of materials are being considered for some of the signs?
I don't know. It's not specified here, or maybe it is. Let me see. I stopped sharing or still sharing?
No, yep, you're still sharing. It's okay.
There is a table there. No, but they're probably metal. I will assume.
Cool.
Thank you for sharing. Any of the signs that are existing would be replaced?
Most probably, yes.
Line for all of it, or it would all generally happen at one time?
I'm writing these questions, and I'll try to
Yeah.
get your answer. I don't know.
Yeah, it will not all happen at once, and I'm trying to look and find the bid document. So if I can find it in the next couple of minutes, but I can also share that with everyone. We have remaining funds from a MassWorks grant. It's around $300,000. And the idea is to do as much as possible with the $300,000.
There's,
And I
My
think it will be
my
the
estimate,
gateways.
there is a lot more here than $300,000.
Right, right. So it will be done in phases, but I believe the bid documents are focusing at a minimum on the gateway signage first.
And which MassWorks grant is that?
This was the one for Main Street.
Mhm.
That was adjusted and amended. And so of course there will be wayfinding signage in Main Street, but we amended that contract to allow us to use the rest of the money to develop the master plan and then use whatever was left for the actual signage.
Mhm.
I believe those probably go, right?
And I will send that along. I will send a copy of the bid document out to everyone, just so you can see what's in this,
Yeah,
this cycle.
so then I don't know the materials, Peter. I will assume it will be specified with the bidding request.
Yeah, I was just thinking that maybe just my idea on the whole concept is maybe like, less is more if we have like nicer signs, but maybe not as many where, if we consider like, quality
Yeah,
over quantity in certain situations, but just
Right,
my,
and that's
idea.
part of the idea, that it wouldn't be, yes,
Stephanie, is the DPW managing this?
they are.
Okay,
Oh, you know what? I might not, actually, I thought I had a copy, but we can get you a copy of the bid package.
okay, I'll stop sharing.
thanks.
But that, and Peter,
Thank
to your point, it's to reduce a lot of the sign clutter that, accumulates in any community
Yeah,
over
right.
time, and to make the signage consistent too, which adds.
Yeah, so that also
these
replaced
areas.
maybe like a few, too many signs, too many old signs with one.
And a conversation I had with David Field on the Lions Club meeting that he was there, he told me about that a lot of the signs are going to be
Mhm.
going out.
Decommissioned.
So I don't know if anyone else saw this, but Greg lost power. He thinks someone may have hit a pole near him.
Oh, that might have been who was knocking at his door.
It could be. And he wrote, Stephanie, if you want to give a quick review of the MBTA zoning, feel free. Or if you want to wait to the next meeting, that's fine. Power just came back on and then just went off again. So I don't know when we'll have juice.
Yep. So I'd like to wait. Greg and I and Wayne met last week to kind of plot out a strategy for how to move forward with developing the zoning for the MBTA communities. I think I may have mentioned at the last meeting that Easton was one of a handful of communities that was participating in a technical assistance grant where DHCD was developing a tool. It's basically an Excel spreadsheet where you enter information about your proposed zone. And the purpose of the spreadsheet is to test your proposed zoning for compliance with the MBTA communities guidelines. We just actually received a summary sheet. So the way it works is you enter the information about what you allow, what you don't allow, dimensional requirements, etc. And then there's a summary that's provided on whether you comply or not, things that you should be able to do to meet the guidelines. So we'll be using that. We think that will be helpful. And then looking at the districts. So Greg will give you a fuller update. We're meeting and spending a couple of hours together again a week from today.
Thank you.
Stephanie, you anticipate a drastic change in zoning in order to accommodate this, or is just a touch up?
The idea is not for a drastic change in zoning because the zoning doesn't have to apply to the entire community. Again, you have these districts and the kind of drastic part is that your district in total has to comprise 50 acres of land. However, again, that can be sub-districts as long as one of the sub-districts is at least 25 contiguous acres. What we're really looking at is where does the development currently exist that complies, that meets that density requirement. So again, Avalon's a good area to start because that's just under 25 acres and it meets the density requirement. I think it's 13 units per acre. So if you start with that, you only need to add a little more land to that district for it to be complying. Some of the, I'm not going to say it's challenging, but they are allowing an inclusionary allowance, which means you can require a certain percentage of the new development, the by right multifamily, to include affordable units. But basically the guideline was the maximum you could require was 10%. They just issued some new changes to the guideline that allows you to make that a little bit larger, but you have to demonstrate that you can still meet the purpose. It won't be uneconomic. So there are some challenges there and we need to look at a little bit more. That just came out this morning. And Wayne and I were going to meet tomorrow to start talking about it and really understand better what that means. So there are other areas that in town where so your smaller districts must be a minimum of 5 acres. And there are other areas in town where we have development that already meets the requirement. So that's where we're focusing, where we're looking.
Are these locations need to go on 106 or 138 that are the main route toward the MBTA, or it can be in other places?
No, what they encourage is if you're not within a half a mile, if you're an adjacent community that's not within a half mile, which means you're not within half a mile of a commuter rail station, what they encourage is that you use smart growth, oh my God, standards. And that your districts be located where they're nearer to, say, a commercial area, mixed use area, where you can encourage more walkability, which is a lot of what Easton's been looking at anyway, and focusing your new zoning on. And the areas that make the most sense for Easton are all within those target growth areas for the most part.
What is 138 and 106? Because it's not Bay Road, right? If you look at the map, where the MBTA stations are, and the main roads, the one for development, it's not
Right.
the heart of this town. It's more on the peripheral, that is 106 and 138, right?
Right. But that's, again, if you look at kind of the concepts of smart growth development, and again, I'll use Foundry Street as a perfect example in the zoning that the board just passed for the type of development you'd like to see along Foundry Street. It's really more of this kind of neighborhoods, mixed use, where you're close to commercial activities, where people could walk, maybe bicycle. That's more of a smart growth concept. It's certainly not getting people closer to public transit that they could use for commuting to work. It's, but I'm sorry, cleaning people are here. But it's more, it still promotes more localized activity and potentially work and activity that might even be outside of your commuting, if that makes sense.
Hey, and the state elections are coming up soon anyway, so you know, people, if they were interested in this subject, they could maybe think about that, so.
Is a 55 plus comply with that?
I'm sorry, I did not hear you.
55 plus enclosed areas like the one in 106 north is near Avalon.
Yeah, the 55 so you can't have age restrictions on your district. That was one of, and which is a little interesting in one way, because a lot of the type of housing you want to provide is to ensure that people can age within their community and kind of stay in place. But they don't want to restrict families, so you can't restrict the number of bedrooms that can be constructed in your district.
Cool. Well,
So Peter, I think you're the chair.
yeah, yep, okay, I was waiting for any other questions or comments on that. I did not hear any. Looks like we'll skip the chair report in the absence of the chair. Stephanie, would you consider that your planning director update there, or
Yep.
do you have some more for us?
Nope, I think that's really it. I think I mentioned at the last meeting, we're in the process of updating our hazard mitigation plan, and I think you folks kind of by default may have elected Greg as the representative from the planning board. But I do think, I think a
There were
lot of
couple,
the
there were a
work that
couple
we did
comments
with
from
them.
the chat that we missed, so you could maybe just put those in the record. And with that, if no one else has anything else, we could make a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, Stetson.
Kevin, second.
Okay, I have to do a roll call here. All in favor? Bob,
Aye.
Deb. Mas. Peter Deshane.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion passes. Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Hey, can I stay on and just ask you a quick question?
Me or Peter?
Sorry.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
You're breaking up. Like you come in really clearly and strong, and then it's really weak.
Well, let me know if you can't hear me.
When you lean in, I can hear you.
Oh, okay, all right. I just wanted to ask, I had seen that there was potentially a park or something that's going to be redeveloped or something, that there might be like a request for proposals or something out. I didn't look into it at all, but I think you were the contact person.
Yes, Swift Spark. I haven't talked about that. I need to put that on the agenda for my update next meeting. I'll do that.
It made me think of that a long time ago when I was not on the board. At one point I was getting requests from the town, like to provide an RFP if there was, I don't know, like town work. Most of it I recall being kind of miscellaneous, like, you know, masonry work for, you know, the water building or adding a door or some little stuff like that. But that needed an architect to, you know, draw and stamp or whatever. And at that time I was just doing residential work, so I didn't do any of it. But in thinking about this park, which might not even be anything, maybe it's just a landscape architecture, and it might not even be anything that I would be interested in, but it reminded me of how I used to get RFPs. I'm not sure if there's a vehicle, if like there's a list that people get invited to do that, and where one would get on that. But then that also made me think, oh gosh, like since I'm on the planning board, can I not actually provide any RFPs? And then that kind of made me go back to some of my thoughts I've been having about by being a member on the planning board and my
Restricting your professional.
and just other
opportunity.
projects even that come up that they might come before us, but they don't have an architect, and I don't know that. I should recuse myself because I haven't been approached yet, but after I vote on it, it might already be too late. So I just wanted to quickly. just
Yeah,
touch
so I
base
think
with you.
on the last thing that you said, that if you're not aware of something, but you vote on it and then it might come up. I think that's the position Greg is in at times where, work, he's not involved, he's not been approached at all on a project, but after the fact, then he might be asked to do the design work. And I think for the most part, this is